Yes, I cheated. Yes, it was in Vegas. Yes, it was with two guys. No, I didn't plan it. And no, I don't remember most of it. But what hurts most isn't what I did, it's what happened after. My boyfriend Mark told my parents. He didn't just break up with me, he forwarded the messages. The ones where I admitted it, where I tried to explain, where I begged him to just talk to me. He took screenshots and sent them to my mom and dad. They haven't spoken to me since. My mom texted me one sentence. "You're not the daughter we raised." Then came the silence, followed by the emails from the bank saying my joint account access had been revoked. The credit card declined at the grocery store. The landlord calling about rent because the transfer for my dad never came. It's been 9 days. 9 days since Mark looked me in the eyes and said, "You disgust me." 9 days since my world shrunk to a single-bedroom apartment with no food, no money, and no one I can call. And still, part of me gets it. I screwed up. I know I did. I was drunk, stupid, surrounded by flashing lights and people I'll never see again, and a version of myself that I didn't recognize, or maybe one that had been waiting to break loose. One shot turned into 3, then 6. Then I woke up tangled in hotel sheets, heads pounding on both sides of me, and a cold panic sitting in my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. But even in all that regret, I never imagined Mark would do that. I told him because I thought I owed him the truth. I told him because I believed that honesty was the first step toward taking responsibility. I didn't tell him to save the relationship. I already knew it was over. I just didn't think he'd take my wreckage and torch everything else I had left, including the one connection I thought was unbreakable, my family. So now I'm here, broke, alone, sitting in the dark with a warm bottle of tap water and half a granola bar, wondering if a single night of bad decisions really deserves a lifetime of exile. I'm not writing this for pity. I'm writing it because I don't know what to do next. Because no one ever teaches you how to survive when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally decide you're not worth it anymore. Before Vegas, I lived a life most people would envy. I had a stable boyfriend, a supportive family, financially at least, and a carefully curated routine. I was finishing up my last semester of college, majoring in communications, with plans to intern at a mid-sized PR firm my uncle helped set me up with. I had never failed a class, never missed a rent payment, and never done anything wild enough to land me in a police report or even on the fringes of campus gossip. On paper, I was the golden daughter. And I knew it. I worked hard to be her. I kept my outfits modest, my social media clean, my drinking minimal. Even my friends, Emily, Kara, and Zoe, used to joke that I was the mom of the group. I kept everyone's secrets, carried backup tampons and Advil, and always volunteered to be the designated driver. I wasn't boring, exactly. Just safe. Mark liked that about me. Or at least, I think he did. We met sophomore year during a group project. He was smart, calm, always 2 steps ahead in everything. We moved in together junior year, and while it wasn't always passionate or exciting, it felt solid. He never raised his voice, never stayed out too late. He liked routines as much as I did. Same breakfast every morning, same grocery store on Sundays. He kissed my forehead before class and said, "Love you, Sam," like it was part of his muscle memory. I knew I loved him. I just wasn't sure if I felt it anymore. And I guess that's where the cracks started. Lately, we'd been more like roommates than lovers. We'd fall asleep with our backs to each other, talk in practicalities instead of dreams. He'd text me, "Can you grab almond milk?" instead of, "How's your day?" Still, I told myself this was just what long-term love looked like. Not fireworks, just comfort. But a part of me started aching for something different. Something reckless, maybe. Something just mine. Then came the Vegas trip. It was Emily's birthday, and she wanted to do something big. One last wild weekend before we all turn into LinkedIn zombies, she said. I hesitated. I didn't love the idea of leaving Mark for 3 days, or spending money I didn't really have on hotel rooms, clubs, and overpriced cocktails. But Mark didn't mind. In fact, he encouraged me. "Go have fun," he said. "Just don't do anything dumb." He smiled when he said it, like it was a joke. I smiled back. But the words clung to me like static. I wasn't planning to do anything dumb. I packed sensible outfits, charged my phone, and even made a note to check in every night. But Vegas had its own gravity. The city doesn't let you think. It swallows thoughts in neon and noise and heat. Time bends there. 4 p.m. becomes midnight in a blink, and reality becomes something you can laugh at between shots of tequila. Our first night was harmless. We danced, drank a little too much, and stumbled back to our hotel giggling. The second night? That was the night everything unraveled. I remember snapshots. The deep thump of music in a rooftop bar, a guy with an Irish accent offering to buy us drinks, Emily pulling me into a booth and whispering, "That guy is so into you." I remember saying no, then laughing, then saying what the hell, and dancing anyway. Then a second guy joined us, blonde, taller, another friend, maybe? Or a stranger? I don't even know. I remember lights. I remember a private room. I remember hands on my waist, a hot breath on my neck. Then I remember nothing. Just a jolt at 6 a.m., sitting up in a bed that wasn't mine, with 2 men on either side and my clothes half missing. I felt sick. Not just hangover sick. Existentially sick. The kind of sick that grabs your throat and whispers, "You've just ruined your life." I gathered my things, didn't say a word. I didn't even know their names. I walked back to our hotel alone, heart hammering, mouth dry, hoping, begging, that maybe it wasn't what it looked like. That maybe I hadn't done the thing I knew deep down I had. Emily was asleep when I came in. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. When I got home to Mark, I lasted 4 days before I cracked. I couldn't lie to his face. He kissed me on the cheek, asked about the trip, and I looked at him like I was looking through a glass wall I couldn't break. So I told him. I'd been drinking, that I didn't remember all of it, that I hadn't planned it, that I didn't even know what to call it, cheating, blackout stupidity, a breakdown. I told him I hated myself for it. He didn't scream, he didn't throw anything, he just stared at me for a long time and said, "You disgust me." Then he walked out. 2 hours later my mom called me crying. "Is it true?" she asked. "Did you really do this?" I asked how she knew. She said Mark had emailed them screenshots, not just of my confession, but of my texts from that morning. The ones where I was still a mess, rambling, begging him to talk, telling him I didn't want to lose him, telling him I loved him. He sent everything. And just like that, my parents, who had paid for my apartment, my school, my groceries, decided I was no longer worth the investment. My dad wrote, "You made your choices. Now you can live with them." I've been living with them ever since. No more boyfriend. No more financial support. Just a fridge full of nothing and a mind full of questions I can't answer. The first day without money hit harder than the breakup. I didn't even notice it at first. I went to the store to grab a few things, eggs, coffee, a frozen pizza, and casually tapped my card like always. Declined. I tried again, declined. My fingers started to shake. I pulled out my backup card, the one my dad had given me 2 years ago, just for emergencies. Declined. I left the basket behind, eyes burning, cheeks hot. Outside, I sat on the curb next to the cart return, breathing through what felt like the start of a panic attack. It wasn't about the groceries. It was about what it meant. I was officially on my own. And I was nowhere near ready. I tried calling my mom. No answer. I texted her, "I know you're angry, but can we just talk? I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix this, but I'm trying." Read. No reply. I stared at the little scene indicator like it could give me back the warmth I'd lost, but all it gave me was silence. That night, I scrolled through my bank app again and again, hoping maybe there was a mistake, maybe a delay, maybe something, but there wasn't. My checking account had $17.46. My rent was due in 9 days. I texted Mark. I shouldn't have, but I did. "Please don't do this. I get it. I hurt you. But why my parents? Why did you need to destroy everything?" He replied 6 hours later. "You destroyed it yourself. I just told the truth. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just cold, polished cruelty from the man I used to share a toothbrush with." I don't think I've ever hated anyone more than I hated him in that moment. Not because he was wrong, but because he didn't care what it cost me. I tried to keep it together for the first few days. I made a list of places that might hire me fast. Cafes, dog walking apps, weekend gigs, but most places wanted references. Background checks. Availability. I didn't have while juggling finals and trying not to spiral. I pawned a necklace my grandmother gave me for graduation. $80. Not enough for rent, but enough to keep the lights on and buy some food. It felt disgusting. I cried in the parking lot afterward, not because I'd sold something sentimental, but because I realized I didn't even miss the necklace. I just missed feeling like I mattered. My roommate Zoe noticed something was off. "You've been weird since you got back," she said one evening, sipping wine. "You and Mark break up or something?" I wanted to tell her everything, but shame has a way of shrinking your throat. I just nodded. "Yeah. Long story." She didn't press, just raised her glass and said, "Screw him." I wish it had been that simple. By the end of the week, I was skipping meals to save money, rice and frozen veggies for dinner, tap water for breakfast. I stopped going out, stopped checking Instagram, stopped replying to group chats. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. I didn't want anyone to see what I'd become. I walked around campus like a ghost in my own body, nodding, smiling, pretending to be fine, but inside it felt like something had cracked. Not because I cheated, but because I was being punished, like I was disposable. The real breaking point came when my dad emailed me. It was short, no greeting, no warmth. "Samantha, until you take full accountability for your behavior and show that you understand the depth of your actions, you're not welcome at home. We did not raise you to be this person." Dad. That last line kept echoing in my head. We did not raise you to be this person. As if I'd become something dirty, unrecognizable. Like all it took was one mistake to erase everything I was before. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them and say, "I'm still me. I'm still the daughter who volunteered at the animal shelter, who FaceTimed my mom every Sunday, who cried when my goldfish died." But they didn't want that girl anymore. Or maybe they only ever wanted the version of her that never made mistakes. I slept with the lights on for a while. I don't know why. Maybe it made the apartment feel less empty. Maybe I just needed to feel like something was still glowing. I started having dreams, panicked, blurry dreams where I was running through hallways that led nowhere or knocking on doors that never opened. I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, blanket kicked off the bed. Some nights, I'd stare at my phone until my eyes ached, half expecting my mom's name to flash across the screen. But it never did. One morning, I ran into Emily, the friend I'd gone to Vegas with. She pulled me aside outside the campus library. "You okay? You kinda disappeared." I almost broke down right there. We ended up sitting on a bench for an hour. I told her everything, about the night in Vegas, about Mark, about my parents cutting me off. She didn't judge. She didn't say I deserved it. She just nodded and said, "That's messed up. But you're gonna get through this." I don't know why her words meant more than any apology I could have gotten. Maybe because she didn't flinch. Maybe because for once, someone saw the whole messy, awful truth and didn't run. That night, she offered her couch if I needed it. I didn't move in right away. Pride's a funny thing. Even when you have nothing, you still want to pretend you're okay. But deep down, I knew I'd have to choose soon. Keep pretending I still had a life, or start building one from scratch. I moved into Emily's apartment on a rainy Tuesday night, carrying everything I owned in 2 trash bags. It wasn't dramatic. No tearful goodbyes, no slamming doors. Just me, standing in the hallway of my old apartment, staring at the bedroom that used to be mine. The bed still smelled like the lavender spray I used every night. The closet still had the outline of Mark's shoes, but nothing belonged to me anymore. Not the space, not the story. I left the keys on the kitchen counter and shut the door behind me. Emily didn't ask questions when I arrived. She just pointed to the couch and said, "You'll need more pillows, but it pulls out." Then she handed me a beer and sat down beside me like we'd done this 100 times before. No one had made me feel that safe in weeks. The first week was rough. I cried every other night. I applied for jobs like my life depended on it, because it did. I picked up a few shifts at a coffee shop near campus. Minimum wage, brutal hours, customers who snapped fingers when we were busy. But it was money. It was mine. It was something. I also started freelancing online, editing resumes, fixing grammar for ESL students, even ghostwriting birthday cards. It wasn't glamorous, but every $20 invoice made me feel a little more in control. Still, there were days I almost gave up. Days when I skipped lunch so I could afford toilet paper. Days when I'd see photos of my friends at brunch, smiling over Eggs Benedict like nothing in the world had gone wrong. And there were nights, dark, dangerous nights, when I thought maybe I was the person my parents believed I'd become. Cheap, shameful, broken. But then, something shifted. One night, Emily came home with wine and takeout and plopped beside me on the couch. "You're glowing," she said. I laughed. "Pretty sure it's just sweat." The espresso machine exploded again. "No," she said. "You've got this weird energy, like you're finally breathing again." I didn't know what she meant, but later, lying in the dark on her pull-out couch, I realized. She was right. Something had changed. It wasn't that I was happy. God, no. But I wasn't scared anymore. Not in the same way. There was something oddly liberating about being disowned. When the people who raised you decide you're not worth their time, it strips everything down. All the layers. All the masks. You're left with nothing but the truth of yourself. And in that stripped-down version of me, I started to see someone I hadn't met before. Someone who worked double shifts and still smiled at strangers. Someone who bought her own soap, her own lunch, her own goddamn dignity. Someone who didn't need a boyfriend or a credit card to feel like she belonged on this planet. It wasn't strength yet, but it was something close. I started journaling again. Not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote letters to my mom I never sent. I wrote down everything I wanted to scream at Mark but never would. And slowly, the words started to sound less like begging and more like remembering. Remembering that I'm not one decision. I'm not one night. I'm not one version of myself that got lost under a Vegas sky. One day at work, a little girl spilled her hot chocolate all over the counter and started to cry. Her dad was flustered, apologizing, pulling napkins like he could fix it with sheer panic. I bent down, smiled at her, and said, "Hey, you know what? Some days are just messy. Doesn't mean they're ruined." She sniffled, then she smiled. Her dad gave me a grateful look, like I'd just saved them both. That moment stayed with me for hours, because I hadn't said it for her, I'd said it for me. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my mom. I almost didn't answer. My hand hovered over the screen like it might burn me, but curiosity won. "Hi," I said, voice flat. There was a pause. Then her voice tight and unfamiliar. "I heard from your aunt that you're working. Is that true?" I swallowed. "Yeah, I've been working 2 jobs, freelance stuff too." Another pause. "You're not using the emergency card?" I actually laughed. "You revoked that, remember?" She didn't reply. I could hear her breathing. "I'm trying, Mom," I said finally. "I made a mistake, yeah, but I'm not a mistake." Her voice cracked. We didn't know what to do." "Punishing me like that? Cutting me off? That was your solution?" "You hurt your father. I hurt myself. He just helped finish the job." Silence. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "But we needed you to understand the weight of your choices." "I do," I said. "I just don't think you needed to abandon me to prove it." The call ended awkwardly. No resolution, no forgiveness, just space. But it didn't hurt like I thought it would. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I was building a life they didn't control. Messy. Imperfect. Real. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It's been 3 months since Vegas. 3 months since I watched my life fall apart like a house of cards in a wind tunnel. 3 months since Mark became a stranger, and my parents treated me like one. 3 months since I had to choose whether to fall apart or rebuild from nothing. I chose the second one. Mostly because I didn't have a choice, but partly because something deep inside me refused to stay broken. I still live on Emily's pull-out couch. It's not ideal, but it feels like home in the way that real homes rarely do. The kind of place where no one expects you to be perfect, where you can cry during laundry and no one asks why. I got promoted at the coffee shop. I run opening shifts now, which means 4:30 a.m. alarms and unlocking the door while the city still sleeps. But there's peace in that quiet. In grinding beans before sunrise. In becoming someone dependable, even if it's just for regulars who tip in loose change and stories. And my freelance work picked up too. I write blog copy now for a small wellness brand. The pay's not amazing, but it's enough. Enough to feel useful, enough to eat better, enough to start saving. It's strange how stability can look nothing like success. Mark messaged me once, just one line, "I hope you're doing better." I didn't reply. Not because I'm bitter, but because there's nothing left to say. He was the one I thought would know me best. But when things got ugly, he didn't just walk away. He handed my shame to the people who could hurt me the most. I've forgiven him, in the quiet way you forgive hurricanes. You don't wish them well. You just rebuild. My parents were civil. Kind of. My mom called again last week. She asked if I needed anything. I told her no. She said she was proud I was working, that she was glad I was okay. There was a pause where I think she wanted me to say, I forgive you. But I didn't. Not yet. I'm not angry anymore, just tired. And maybe that's worse. Because when the people who raised you decide you're disposable, something inside you shifts forever. You learn to parent yourself, to cheer yourself on, to make peace with the fact that unconditional sometimes has conditions. Maybe one day I'll visit home again, sit at that old kitchen table, let the silence stretch and crack until someone finally says what we're all pretending not to feel. But right now, I don't need to go back. I'm building forward. There's a part of me that will always wonder who I might have been if Vegas never happened. If I'd never cheated. If I'd come home with nothing to confess. But then I think about the girl I was before all of this. Scared of disappointing anyone. Starving for approval. Confusing obedience with worth. And I realize that girl needed to fall apart. Because this version of me, broke, bruised, rebuilding, is the most honest I've ever been. I'm not healed yet, but I'm healing. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm proud of how I got back up. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change Vegas. I'd change what came before. Because cheating didn't break me. Being abandoned did. And somehow that break made space for a woman who finally knows how to stand alone.